A warm welcome to all. Myself Kishore Kumar. I am doing my UG first year in Agriculture College and Research Institute Kilikulam, TNAU. In this channel, we are uploading the videos related to agricultural economics. Today, my seminar topic is to clear, that is land reforms. Before getting into the video, we may get to know what are the contents we will get to know. Under the introduction, we may get to know definition of land reform. After that, the topic is the abolition of intermediaries. Under this topic, we may get to know what is Zamindari system, Mahalwar system, and Rayatwar system, and Zamindari system abolition. And after that, tenancy reforms have to be known, and after that, sealing on land holdings. After completing sealing on land holdings, we may get to know what's the productivity of a sealing on land holdings in economics. After that, the conclusion we get introduction. Introduction. Rennie, in the year of 1958, defines land reform as one that comprises improvement in all the economic and social institutions surrounding farm life. In the year of 1958, Rennie, an economist, defined the land reform as that it is the one that comprises all the improvement in economic and the social institutions which are surrounding the farm life. In this, we are mainly concerned about the three. They are the abolition of intermediaries, tenancy reforms, sealing on land holdings. The abolition of intermediaries. Under this, the first one we get to know is Zamindar system. The Zamindar system was introduced by Lord Cornwallis in Bengal in the year of 1793. In the Zamindar system, between the tenants and the government, there is an intermediary is present, and that one is known as landlord or the Zamindar. The Zamindar or the landlord is regarded as a owner of the land by the government, because he is the one who pays the tax to the government as a landowner. But actually, the thing is, the rent was actually paid by the tenants to the landlord, and after that the landlord pay the tax to the government. Here the landlord acts as an intermediary and have to consume some percentage of amount from the rent, and tenants may have a good or the bad relationship with the landlords based on the behavior of the landlord with the tenants or the peasants. And subtenant. Subtenant is the nothing but it is the tenants have to rent their land to the another tenant, and they fix the rent of the land which is actually higher than the rent which is set by the landlord to the actual tenant, and after that the tenants gets a rent from the another tenant which they rent the land to them, and after that, they paid the rent to the landlords. By this, the tenant gets some extra amount from the subtenants. Here is a pyramid which indicates the actual position of the peasants, zamindars, and the British government in the zamindar system. Under the peasants are present, after above them the zamindars are present, and above them the British government is present. Between the peasants and the government, the zamindar is present, and he is the one who acts as an intermediary. This picture indicates the position of the peasants during the zamindar system. Mahalwar system. Mahalwar system was introduced in the year of 1822 by Hall Mackenzie. Later that this system was reformed and reintroduced in the period of 1833 by William Bentinck. The system is a primary one which is practiced in the parts of northwest India. It was introduced in central province, northwest frontier, Agra, Punjab, Gangetic Valley, etc., of British India. In the system, actually, the land was divided into separate mahals, and each mahal is consists of one or more villages. Each mahal is uh, treated as a single unit for the collection of the tax from the peasants. In this, the village headman or the village committee have to set up, and this committee or the village headman to take the responsibility for the collection of the tax from the peasants, and the ownership rights are vested with the peasants. Here the peasants are treated as the owner of the land. Even though the peasants were treated as the owner of the land, here the taxes was too enough, so that the peasant suffers too many because of paying higher tax. The Mahalwari system had many provisions of both the Zamindari system and the Rayatwari system. And then Rayatwari system. This Rayatwari system was introduced in the year of 1820. The system is actually introduced by Thomas Munro. This is a primary land revenue system which is practiced in the southern part of India. Major areas of introduction include Madras, Bombay, parts of Assam, and Cork province of British India. Cork is a place which takes place in the state of Karnataka, and Madras is the place which includes the Andhra Pradesh and major parts of Kerala and some parts of Karnataka in the pre-independence stage. In this, the peasants were considered also as the owner of the land, and they have a right to sell or give their land to anyone. And the tax has to be paid by the peasants directly to the government. Here, there is no intermediary is present like Zamindar in the Zamindari system, or a village committee or a village headman in Mahalwari system. Here, the tax was paid by the peasant to the government directly. And Inamdar or Jagirdar. Inamdar was a feudal title prevalent before and during British Raj, including during the Maratha rule of Peshwa and other rulers of India. The title was bestowed upon to the person who received lands as inam, grant, or as gift, rewarding the extraordinary service rendered to the ruler or the priestly state. Inabdar is the nothing but he is the one who got the land as a gift from the rulers as for their externally uh, service for the rulers or the state. This was practiced during the British Raj and the Maratha rule of Peshwa and other rulers of India. Here, the Inabdar got the land from the rulers as a gift or the inam for their service to the rulers and the state. Zamindari Abolition. This became a great issue at the end of Second World War. The Congress Election Manifesto of 1945 stated the reform of land system, which is so urgently needed in India, involved the removal of intermediary between the peasant and the state. The right of such intermediaries should therefore be acquired on payment of equitable compensation. Zamindari abolition became a great issue at the end of Second World War, and during the election manifesto of Congress in 1948, they stated 1945. They stated that abolition of intermediary is much important in the implication of land reform, because that intermediaries act as a um, uh, intermediary involved in the removal of rights of the peasants. After by the removal of intermediary, the peasants have to pay their tax directly to the government, and there should be an equitable compensation between the all peasants. Why Zamindar system got abolished? Rural poverty at the time. And the major problem India faced after independence was acute poverty. 55 percentage people were poor. Agriculture sector labor's opportunity were limited due to the zamindari system. The opportunities of in the agriculture sector is minimized, and the poverty rate becomes high at that time. 55 percentage of people all over the total country were poor at the after independence. At the time of independence, the idea to remove rural poverty by giving the lands to the poor and the land cultivation was widely agreed. The zamindar system was come to the end. Abolition of zamindari system states that giving the lands to all the peasants as they become a owner of that land and they have to cultivate, and it should increase their standard of living. By that, the poverty rate get too low. And then tenancy reforms. After passing the Zamindari Abolition Acts, the next major problem was of tenancy regulation. Tenancy reforms aim to regulation of rent, provide security of tenure, and conferring ownership to the tenants. The tenancy reforms laws provide the provisions for the registration of tenants or giving ownership rights to the former tenants to bring them directly under the state. Tenancy reforms that Tenancy reforms is nothing but giving the ownership to the tenants of the land. Tenants. After the abolition of zamindar system, the actual ownership is get exploited from the zamindars and giving the land ownerships to the tenants, so that the tenants become the owners of that land. After that, the regulation of the rent has to be made so that the rent has to be fixed, and there is no high amount of rent has to be paid by the tenants. Impact of tenancy reforms on productivity. Further, since the tenancy reforms coincide with the Green Revolution, it was difficult to define how exactly it helps in productivity. There was a positive correlation between the growth and the production and the progress of tenancy. By the impaction of tenancy reforms, the tenants become the owner of the land, so that they have to be produce a high amount. This amount increase the growth of production, so that the production rate get increases. It led to changes such as greater social equity and self confidence among the poor tenants. By the impact of tenancy reforms, the tenants have become the owner of the land, so that their poverty has to be decreased, and there should be the social equity among all the tenants and all the people who have the land. However, some studies criticize it and say that due to the poor resource base, tenancy reforms could not lead to growth in the productivity. However, some resources said that due to the low resource base, these tenancy reforms did not have any ability to increase the productivity in the growth. Ceiling on land holdings. The term ceiling on land holdings refers to the legally stipulated maximum size beyond which no individual farmer or farm household can hold any land. Several states passed different legislation and gave many relaxations. As a result, the surplus, the land available for the distribution was negligible. Efforts should be made to redistribute ceiling surplus land and to enforce ceiling laws effectively. Under the ceiling on land holdings, all the lands have to be seized by the government, and after that, each land is given to the household or the individual farmer equally. So that the acquired land has to be redistributed to the farmers under some of the legislations which are passed by the several states. Aim of land ceiling. According to the report of the panel on land reform, the aim of the land ceilings was to meet widespread desire to possess land, reduce glaring inequalities in ownership and the use of land, reduce inequalities in agricultural income, and enlarge the sphere of self-employment, give a new status to the landless. The actual aim of the ceiling on land holdings is that widespread desire to possess land, which means all everyone should possess some amount of land, reduce glaring inequalities in the ownership and use of land, which means reduce the amount of which means equality in the amount of the land in which everyone possesses, reduce inequalities in agricultural income, and enlarge the sphere of self-employment. Uh, by giving lands to the everyone, each one becomes self-employed, and there should be the equity in their agricultural income, give a new status to the landless. By getting land from ceiling on land holdings law, the landless become a new status in the get the new status in the society as become a landowner. Conclusion. Land reform programs were started with the thunderous enthusiasm, but soon the vitality of this enthusiasm was lost, and the implementation of the land reforms becomes a very tame affair. There is no doubt that land reforms were conceived broadly in a proper perspective. They have brought justice to the rural people. Conclusions that the land reform started with a thunderous enthusiasm, but soon the vitality of that enthusiasm was lost, and it's become very slow process, and this implementations become very slow, and it's become an affair. Serious affair at the time. There is no any doubt this land reforms bring the equity among the people, and this land reforms bring the justice to the rural people. Till this, what we are seen are land reforms and its definition, and the zamindar system, and who introduced the zamindar system, what is zamindar system, who is zamindar or the landlord, and Rayatwar system and Mahalwar system. Under the Mahalwar system, what are called as Mahal, and who is the village headman or the village committee, and like that, and subtenants, and Zagirdar or Inamdar. After that, the tenants abolition of zamindar system have we seen, and after that tenancy reforms and tenancy legislations, um, and what is tenancy reforms, and how this tenancy reforms increase the productivity in the economic wise, like that. And after that, ceiling on land holdings we seen, under this topic we see that um, what is the actual concept of ceiling on land holdings, and it's aim to improve the standard of people or standard of landless people in the society, like that. After that, we come into the conclusion. Under the conclusion, we may see the overall travel of land reforms from the beginning to the end. Here is the quote which is given by Mahatma Gandhi about the land is verify the land belongs to him who labors on it. Thank you.